Hi everybody, my name is Jordan and I'm a transmission engineer in the UK, and today we're looking at the Kiev independence coverage inside a Ukrainian power plant Russia keeps hitting. This is my first React video. I'm not going to play their whole video inside of my video because I'd rather you check out their video in full and see the stories of the people who are going through this and working to keep the lights on in Ukraine. But I'll offer some insights from what I can see in the video and hopefully you'll learn a few things along the way. So without further ado, let's have a quick look.
I'm here at one of the thermal power plants operated by DTEK, Ukraine's largest private energy.
So straight away there, thermal energy plant essentially means something where you burn something to generate electricity. So that would be coal, gas or oil. I know in the Kiev region, there's a few of those plants in operation there at the moment. So let's keep going.
Company. Now, for security reasons, we can't disclose exactly whereabouts we are or what the damage has been. What we can say is that this plant is one of the victims of Russia's relentless campaign against Ukraine's energy infrastructure this autumn and winter.
It's quite battered.
It's one of the plants that has been damaged by missiles and drones. And despite that, the energy workers are here round the clock repairing the damage, desperate to get it up and running in time for the winter period. Problem is, the temperatures are dropping, the nights are getting longer, and Ukrainians across the country are plunged into blackouts. So I just got back home from work. It's about 8:30 at night, and I came home to a blacked out apartment. That's because in Ukraine for the last few months, there have been these scheduled power outages since Russia's been hammering the energy grids and energy facilities. So in order to save the grids and not overburden it, electricity is essentially rationed throughout the country. Sometimes the blackouts last 4, 5, 6 hours. Some people, I remember last month or so, some of my friends didn't have power for like a couple of days at a time. You can't use...
So that essentially describes rolling blackouts or load shedding. You'll often hear about this in some developing countries, in places in Africa and South America, for example, where there's some turmoil and they essentially can't generate enough electricity to meet the demand, or parts of the grid are damaged, for example from storms or general disrepair, so they can't get the power to where it's needed. So if you were to have everyone connected at once, that would overload the bits of the grid that still existed, or like I said, they can't generate enough electricity as it is in this case because the plants have been destroyed, so they need to ration that electricity. So they'll switch off sections of the grid at a time, and each section will get a sort of equal amount of time connected.
Wi-Fi, it means that you can't turn on the light, can't hoover, you can't do your washing up. Fortunately, I still do have water and gas, so I can heat my apartment and I can cook. So I've been writing about these Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy facilities for years now. It's a really brutal tactic to try and break Ukrainian spirit. But fortunately, so far, we've seen that it's failed.
Pause that there. Looking at that generator there, that's a pretty small, says gasoline generator. So that's a petrol generator for anyone in the UK.
Ukrainians have adapted and survived with these generators, with power banks. But this year, it's a lot tougher. Starting in September.
And just pause that again there, 2 minutes 14. So having a look at that on the left there, that's a Pramast generator, it says. So that one's a 50 kilowatt unit and it consumes 14.9 litres per hour at full load. So just to give you an idea of how much power that's generating, 50 kilowatts, it's quite a bit. Easily, 10, 15, 20 homes. So that's probably powering that whole sort of block of apartments and shops on the left there. And like I say, going through around 14, almost 15 litres of diesel per hour.
In October, Russia has launched huge attacks on energy facilities. Sometimes one infrastructure can come under an attack with 40 drones and several missiles, including ballistics. Now, that doesn't mean that Ukraine's plants are completely off. What happens is energy workers who stay on site, they begin to repair the plants themselves. It's really a massive race against time. But what's going to happen in January and February?
Looks like a destroyed transformer in the background there.
Can plummet to around negative 20 degrees Celsius. Well, it's going to be the question that Ukraine has to answer this winter. So the electricity came back on at some point during the night, which is good because going to beds without electricity and then waking up in the darkness is pretty depressing. So
some of them apartments there will have some sort of,
you can see,
battery backup.
We are going to go take a trip to an undisclosed location to see some undisclosed things. Now we have to be super secretive about where we're going and what exactly we're going to see, but we are going to see a plant that has been damaged by heavy strikes.
So now we'll get on to the bits that I can actually comment on.
Okay, so it's lovely and quiet this morning, but in a few hours when the electricity goes out, this neighborhood is gonna be buzzing with the sound of generators, and this is something you see everywhere around Kiev.
Probably skip a bit for this or speed it up maybe, I don't know.
Here you have these giant generators pretty much everywhere around major businesses, supermarkets.
Energy plus. This one is a 140 kVA unit, that's 112 kilowatts, and that one consumes 28 litres of diesel per hour at full load. Again, 112 kilowatts is a pretty decent amount of electricity. You know, my home here in the UK generally uses about 2 kilowatts or so on average per hour, usually a lot less actually. So yeah, that'll easily power, especially when rationing, probably 100 homes, maybe more, maybe less.
Offices, without them, the city just wouldn't really survive. They are a total lifesaver here.
And yeah, just to pause that again there, so when the grid is being heavily attacked, having this distributed generation all across the city makes it incredibly resilient. So you're not relying on these big thermal generation plants like we mentioned at the start and that we're going to view in a second here. So yeah, it makes them quite resistant to these attacks if everyone has their own power source.
It looks like this area's got a blackout because there's no street lights anymore. So we're on our way to the thermal power plant now, and as we were coming out of Kiev, we saw how the part of the city was still in blackouts. You had no streetlights, completely blacked out apartment buildings, and it's quite an eerie thing to see when you're driving through. It was just kind of on the cusp of the morning. But that's how much of the city is now, and a lot of other cities as well that are suffering these relentless attacks. And it comes as DTEC is suffering really heavy strikes. DTEC is one of the largest power producers in Ukraine. It's the largest private power producer. They have plants all over the country. Just for you to understand, last year there were 10 major Russian attacks
coolant tower
on DTEC's thermal power plants, which wiped out 90% of its thermal power generation. The goal of Russia's campaign against Ukraine's energy infrastructure is essentially to
Those, just go back slightly, look like sort of general control protection panels there for operating the plant. You know, swing frame door. In here will be different sort of instrumentation panels for checking things like voltage, you know, speed of rotation and things like that. Looks like a bunch of charred computer monitors in the front here.
Energy infrastructure is essentially to demoralize Ukrainians.
And on the left here we've got a transformer. Yeah, I'll say now, obviously they've travelled out of Kiev to this power plant. You know, I'm not any sort of OSINT type person. I imagine a lot of people out there will be able to figure out what power plant this is. just by some of these pictures. There'll be plenty online of these spaces. As I say, it's a thermal plant, so it's probably coal or gas. They said it's near Kiev, and on open infrastructure maps, there's 3 gas plants very near the city and 1 small coal plant. The grid in Ukraine for sort of these higher voltages is 110 kV or 330 kV. So that's relevant to the transformers we're going to look at in a second, like this one on the left here. So yeah, just
without
look.
power.
Oh, hello. Thank you. So yeah, taking a look at this transformer on the left of the screen here, like I say, that looks like a slightly smaller transformer if I had to guess. So probably not the 330 kV, which is sort of closer to the 400 kV, in between 275 and 400 in the UK. And on the lower side we use 132, which is the sort of bottom of transmission but the top of distribution in the UK, because we separated out at that level. So that looks like a 132, or in their case a 110 kV transformer. Looking at the left here, so you've got some sort of radiator bank at the back here that's all charred up. This is the conservator at the top. This is the conservator at the top there, which allows the oil inside to expand and contract as the transformer changes temperature, as it heats up, as the weather changes outside. And on the left here you can see 2 of these tube things, somewhere at the top, and that'll either be a well, that'll be the bushings for the transformer, so where the power actually comes in and out of the transformer. And that will either be gas insulated, where we use a gas like SF6 or sulfur hexafluoride, which is an extremely good insulator for electricity. Nowadays that's becoming sort of banned across a lot of the world, especially in the UK. I think 2027 is the sort of cut-off point where we don't really want to be installing any more of that, and we want to be putting newer gases in there that are less harmful to the environment, because SF6 is a massively pollutant. It's a massive global warming potential substance. I'll have to talk about that another time in another video, especially on insulating gases. But the alternative is this could actually be a bus duct, where essentially it's your normal air insulated bus bar. So when you see a substation, it's usually air insulated, where everything's exposed outside. You see either the thin copper bars or the big thick aluminium bars. And that transports the electricity. But with air insulated, we space them out quite far, because you need a bigger gap, because the insulated medium is just air. The only thing stopping one bar from arcing to the other, phase to phase, is the air. The air provides that insulation for the electricity. And again, I've got a whole video coming on the way electricity arcs through the air, and how things like air temperature, moisture and things like that affect that. For this video, the idea of having a bus duct is that normal air insulated bus bar, AIB, but you put a duct around it to protect it, and what that does is that gives you more control of that insulation around it. So with a normal air insulated bus bar, if you've got 2 bars running parallel, if something was to fall between them 2 bars, for example a bird flies between it, or in distribution sometimes a small animal might actually bridge across the 2 because the gap is that small. That bridging between the 2 will cause a short, and that will cause a blackout or a fire or damage to equipment. So what you can do is you can put this duct around it, which is a mechanical protection, and that gives you more control to make sure you're not having a phase to phase arc short circuit essentially. And I've only ever worked on one substation which had a bus duct. It was a brand new substation we built in Wales. I'll post a picture up on the screen now so you can have a look at that. On the left of the picture is the bus duct, and on the right is a normal air insulated bushing, because the right side went off to the small switchgear yard, circuit breaker, VTs, CTs, that sort of thing, and then down into a cable. and that was the distribution network, and on the left was the higher voltage, in this case bus duct for a synchronous condenser.
Our hospitals have to rely on generators, life becomes harder, businesses lose money, and it encourages people to leave the country or to flee to different regions where there is power. Fortunately, these energy workers are managing to restore quickly enough so that we do have at least some electricity throughout the day. Without them, there would just be a massive humanitarian disaster within Ukraine.
So you can see protection they've probably put up since the war started to try and protect the plant from debris, you know, from drone strikes, air strikes, that sort of thing. You can see it's had some quite big blast marks put in it, probably from debris getting blasted into the wall. And here we can see something quite familiar for anyone who's been on a substation, and for anyone who's familiar with my North Hyde video. We talk a lot about these blast walls. You can see here on the left, and there's one on the far right of the screen there. So yeah, these blast walls essentially try to contain the fire or explosion if a transformer was to fail. So again, talking about North Hyde, you had the two transformers right next to each other, and there was nothing separating them in between. So when one of them actually failed and caught fire, the shrapnel from that actually damaged the other transformer right beside it, because the bushings on top, you can just see one on the far side of this transformer here, are typically made of porcelain or glass. In the UK usually porcelain, and it's quite fragile. So if one of these was to blow up, or if any debris was to blow up anywhere around here and come flying across here and hit that, it's going to smash it, and then that's going to cause a short circuit, and it's going to flash over, and it could quite destructively blow up. And of course these transformers are filled with oil, and the oil is nearly always flammable oil, and when that goes up, obviously that's going to cause a lot of mess as well. So these blast walls are one of the sort of passive protections you can put in place to protect other assets adjacent on the other side of the wall from damage if that one transformer was to fail. Obviously on the left here you can see a load of damage in here. You know, all this sort of cable, tray, ductwork is all damaged. So chances are something on this side's already been damaged anyway. And on the right here, this transformer's destroyed. So having a look at this picture here, again, like I say, there's a bushing on this side here. Maybe just make out another one there, unless that's part of the tower behind. So there's only two bushings still alive on that side. On this side, there was a bushing here, and then there's two still sort of intact here. So again, talking about those ducts, or you know, GIB, gas insulated bus bar before, that's what we're seeing here. If we look up to the top right of the picture, so you can see these ones go up and across. Chances are this is actually a separate bus duct above it, or a gas insulated bus bar going across the top of it. It's probably coming across the top and then into this bay here, where there'll be another transformer. So that's the benefit of having these either ducts or gas insulated bus bars, is you can have these really close together, right on top of each other, and they won't arc across. Whereas if that was a typical air insulated substation, you'd have a few meters gap between them, you know, top and bottom, or a few meters gap side to side. It would take up so much more room. So especially in a city where this is very close to, using gas insulated just makes sense. You can have a much smaller footprint for your electrical transmission, and yeah, offers a bit more protection, so that just makes sense. On the left of the transformer here, you can just make out these big fan looking things, and that'll be the radiator bank for the transformer. Again, just to provide cooling if it's running under a heavy load. You need to cool that oil down and make it still effective. And looking at the transformer just in general, the state of it, the top of it started to rust here, so it's been damaged for quite some time. Obviously, you know, looking at this, it's a mess, so it's been destroyed at some point. And yeah, that tells me that this has caught fire at some point. All the paint's been destroyed off it, and then it's began to rust. So Yeah, not much else I can make out in this picture. Obviously in the top right hand corner again you can see the conservator there behind the bus ducts. In the back you can see a tower. So yeah, we'll keep going. So let's quickly go back there. So yeah, on that one there we can see that is the radiator bank. So you can see all the different heat pipes inside here. That would be a radiator, you know, usual maximum surface area to get the oil through, to cool it down with the air. And there's probably the fans on the back there that would force the air through. So generally it will passively cool. The oil will go into the radiator would cool it down naturally with the air, and then under a heavy load maybe the fans will switch on, maybe half will switch on and then all of them will switch on, and that'll give you a maximum cooling. And you can see all the different pipework down here. There's probably pumps in there as well to force the oil through the radiator, or it can operate through natural convection where the hot oil naturally flows into the pipework, cools down, comes back into the transformer. You can see pipework on the right hand side here. And in the distance there you can see the gantries and the lightning protection on top, and that'll be for the switchyard. So again, once it comes out the other side of this transformer, it's going into a typical air insulated switchyard. So you'll have a gantry here, and that'll support an overhead line from here, probably over a road or something else, to allow good access. Need to say titanium. Anyway. So yeah, again, just looking on the left hand side here, we can see these ducts again. So you can see all three of them intact, going across the top. These ones drop down to here. And looking at the fact that they're just floating in the air, cheers cat, right in my face. There would have been a transformer or something here probably at one point, or you know, something that might be an auxiliary transformer to provide power to the station from the main bus bars, something like that. And it's now gone. So it looks like that maybe got destroyed a long time ago, and they've since stripped that out, maybe sent it for scrap, and you've just got the floating bus ducts here. Or yeah, I'd be inclined to say it's bus duct, or it's gas insulated bus bar, but judging by all the holes in it, they've just not bothered capping it off because they're not going to use it anymore. You know, judging by the damage to the station, you know, lead times on transformers of this size can be years, unless they're sourcing them from somewhere like China, where they might be able to produce them at a faster rate than places in the West like Siemens or ABB or anywhere like that. But yeah, even transformers from the likes of South Korea, you know, Hyundai, Hyosung, all those different companies like that way, there's still a long lead time on it, and it'll cost a lot of money. And when you're under constant threat of, you know, it takes a long time to get a transformer there, and they're big and hard to move and slow. So it'll be quite obvious when there's a transformer getting delivered, be a very easy target to hit. They would get it installed, it would get blown up again, and then that's millions of pounds or millions of, you know, whatever currency they use in Ukraine, you know, wasted for that. Cheers, cat. You know, I'm not trying to shoot a video here. Thank you. Look.
So, and I mean, it's really...
So yeah, we can see that what was on the back of that picture just before, in the background there, see the ducts coming down, see something in the background there, it might be a transformer or something,
to the entrance,
not connected very well anymore. Maybe there was two back to back here, because you can see this one is floating in the background, that one's not connected.
You see burnt out cars and a building that's just been absolutely torn apart. There's sort of plexiglass covering the windows, stitched together with tape, boards just covering up where windows used to be. It really feels like the plant is just being very lightly held together. But yet still, the workers are coming here, they are doing their best to
there's
damage that Russia had.
So there's about 6 or 7 minutes left of that video there, describing the stories of the people who maintain the generators there, and the power plants and keep the grid running. to keep the lights on and give the Ukrainian people a sense of normality. Having electricity is a basic need these days. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend checking out the full video so that you can hear those stories and hear what these people have to go through on a daily basis under constant threat of attack, and still just turning up and doing the best to keep things running. And you saw the state of the plants there. It raises some great questions on resilience. This isn't the first war with Russia that Ukraine has faced. Not so much a war, but the invasion of Crimea and things like that. So when this war does eventually end, there's some great learning, some great questions to be asked about what the future grid for Ukraine looks like. A lot of cities, they build their substations underground and in the bottom of buildings with GIS and GIB, so gas insulated equipment, purely to save on real estate space, compared to air insulated, which takes up a lot of room, so you can't have that in a city necessarily. So it'll be interesting to see what the future substations look like, and how the grid starts to decentralise, moving towards things like solar and battery and other generation sources. Obviously it's quite cold in Ukraine, so solar might not be the best. Obviously it's not dependent on cold but sunlight, but northern hemisphere's less sunlight in the winter, and as you can see, they're using generators for the most part at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see how the grid evolves, if they move away from large centralised generation to more distributed at the extremities of the grid, closer to where the demand is. But Ukraine is also a massive industrial centre, and those factories and things will need to be fed with power, and large amounts of it. So I don't think the grid will go entirely. So yeah, thank you for sticking with me for that. I managed to turn 6 minutes of a 14-minute video into almost a half an hour long sort of ramble. Hopefully learnt a few things out of that. And I've been meaning to cover Ukraine for quite a while. It's a very interesting topic as far as energy is concerned. So if you know anyone who works for the grid operator out there, or any of the generation companies, I'd be interested to speak to them. Maybe even take a visit out there and see what I can cover. And if there's any other topics like this that you'd like to react to, any videos that you'd like my opinion on, by all means leave that down in the comments and I'll get to that, and we'll see you in the next one. So thank you, and Happy New Year. Cheers. If you're interested in more industrial history and technical content, like, subscribe, and let me know down below what else you want me to cover. If you want to support me directly and have a bigger say in what videos I work on next, check out my Patreon link in the description, and thanks to my patrons Benedict, Mark, Mr. Bear, Andy, Herring, Andrew, Jack, Lionel, Richard, TJ, Colin, Jay Hamilton, Nils, Tim Small, John Walker, Joe Newman, Gavin, White Quark, Marius.